all of us, step back and we think about what's most important to us, what would that be? And for most people, it's things like, I really want to feel some peace in my life. I want to have healthy relationships with my son or daughter or spouse. I want to feel effective and productive in the workplace. Like I want to wake up excited in the morning. I want to feel healthy. I don't want to have that afternoon drag. And these are the types of things that people want universally across the board. We're all looking for similar things. The question is how to get there. And 68% of people feel like prioritizing their time is their number one challenge. And yet 80% of those same people that we surveyed didn't have a process outside of sticky notes, to-do lists, delegating their schedule to their secretary, whatever, but they weren't getting on top of it. And last comment on this is, I've been married for 26 years. I have 4 children, running multiple businesses. I know what it's like to have, multiple people demanding time. And everybody listening to this can relate to that. Everybody has experienced what it's like to have multiple people wanting a piece of your time. So the question is, how do we prioritize and do what matters most?
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Today we're going to talk about prioritizing your life. Leaders get pulled in a lot of different areas, and it's not just work. Sometimes it's personal, sometimes it's home life. You want to make sure you're prioritizing your life, or else it will be prioritized for you. Our special guest today is Rob Shallenberger. He is the author of Do What Matters Most, among some other books that he's written. This is the second edition of Do What Matters Most. Today, we're going to unpack one tool or habit, if you will, that will change your life. This is Rob's promise to you, but I really do believe that if you follow through with this and you actually take it to heart, do it week after week, you will notice improvements in all areas of your life because it touches not just the business side, it's the personal and any other role you have. He'll explain that inside today's interview. It will change your life. I plan on doing a lot of this work myself. I'm going to get the digital planner for my Gmail because I saw a little demo of it, really powerful. So I'm just going to say that to you. And if you do decide to get something out of this, I'd love for you to reach out to me and tell me that you've got an impact from the work that Rob's talking about today and these habits. It's incredible if you would reach out and say thanks. My name is Gene Hammett. I'm an executive coach. Got a little tongue-tied there. I have been working as an executive coach since 2012. So 13 years. It really is the longest I've ever done anything professionally. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and my main primary thing is not just podcasting, but I'm an executive coach helping businesses grow to the next level, and specifically those that have an opportunity on the horizon where they've got to get alignment with their team. They've got to get their own leadership to that next level. And because something is holding them back, whether it's a mindset, a strategy, or some other limiting belief, that I help them understand it and help them wrestle with that to overcome it and transform through it. And I truly believe this is my life's calling. I've been doing this for more than a decade, and I'd love to help you. If you're interested in the work that I do, you don't have to want to hire me and whatnot. You just want to have a conversation about that next opportunity and about alignment and leadership. The culture of your people. That's my expertise. I'd love to use some of the tools we have to help you and guide you and help you prioritize what's next. And when you know what's next, go execute on it. And then you can come back to me and say, I did it. What's next again? I'll keep helping you as long as you want me to help you. But if you want to discuss working together as a coach, I'll do that too. When you think of what that next opportunity is, you want to make sure you're showing up as your best. Just send me an email, gene@genehammett.com. Say you heard it on the podcast. You would like to have a quick conversation with me about what's next, your leadership, that next opportunity. Just go to gene@genehammett.com. Now, here's the interview with Rob. Hey, Rob, how are you?
Doing wonderful. Thank you. So nice to be here. Awesome to be with you, Gene.
Well, I'm excited to have you on the show, and we're going to dive into your work. Give us a little bit of a background on you, Rob, and the work that you're doing right now.
Yeah, here's the 1-minute background. Grew up in Utah. Spent 2 years serving a mission in Bolivia, service mission, graduated from Utah State, MBA from Colorado State, went on to fly F-16s in the Air Force for 11 years, worked with Air Force One at the tail end of that. Incredible experiences there. And then subsequent to that, 13 years ago, started a leadership and training company. And we have since now trained, thousands of organizations around the world. And even though we have 18 to 20 minutes today, Gene, which might seem short, this is going to be powerful because what we're going to share applies to every single person that's listening. It's impacted and changed my life, and I know that it will for anybody listening and who applies what we're about to talk about today.
So let's just dive in because we don't have that much time. I'm very eager to get into the heart of it. And I love to start off with sort of the challenges or the issues that are faced so many busy executives. How would you frame that in for us?
Yeah, you and I were just talking before the show started, and I cited that the former CEO of Cliff Bar said, I wish I would have had this Do What Matters Most program in my 20s. And that's because of how life-changing the habits are. And what we've really done is taken terms that people have heard and systematized them and created the tools by which they can take control of their life. And what I mean by that is, if those listening, all of us, step back and we think about what's most important to us, what would that be? And for most people, it's things like, I really want to feel some peace in my life. I want to have healthy relationships with my son or daughter or spouse. I want to feel effective and productive in the workplace. Like I want to wake up excited in the morning. I want to feel healthy. I don't want to have that afternoon drag. And these are the types of things that people want universally across the board. We're all looking for similar things. The question is how to get there. And 68% of people feel like prioritizing their time is their number one challenge. And yet 80% of those same people that we surveyed didn't have a process outside of sticky notes, to-do lists, delegating their schedule to their secretary, whatever, but they weren't getting on top of it. And the last comment on this is, I've been married for 26 years. I have 4 children, running multiple businesses. I know what it's like to have, multiple people demanding time. And everybody listening to this can relate to that. Everybody has experienced what it's like to have multiple people wanting a piece of your time. So the question is, how do we prioritize and do what matters most? And that's exactly the question that we sought to answer and developed a program around, and what we'll talk about today.
Which is coincidentally the title of your book. This is the second revision of Do What Matters Most. And so if anybody wants to go deeper into it, obviously you can do that, but we're going to give you a little bit of I don't like the taste of it. So I want to dive deep into some area of this you feel like will serve our audience the most. What area is that for you?
Easy answer, 100%. So let me back up just a little bit and then I'll answer that question. So what we've done is taken terms we've heard about our whole lives. And like I mentioned, we systematized it and then developed the tools. So for example, we've developed an online digital planner that you can download and use in Outlook or Google. We have the ability for people to customize their own planner and order their own planners. Yet what we've created is a system on how to use that. And so there's 3 habits that are talked about in Do What Matters Most that are life-changing habits. And the phrase is, we'll either lead a life by design or live a life by default. And I know, Gene, you talk a lot about leadership, and leadership truly starts within each one of us, right? I think all of us would agree with that. How can we draw water from an empty well? And so how do we show up and become an effective and great leader if we can't lead our own life? And that's why this resonates so deeply with people, because it gives them a very clear process and a way to do it. It's not just theoretical. And so of those 3 habits, you asked which one should we focus on? Easy answer. It's the 3rd habit, and that's what we call pre-week planning. And I know we'll dive into this, but I'll say this. When I mentioned the term pre-week planning, the response from most people initially is, oh yeah, I do pre-week planning. Like I go through my work role and I figure out all the things I need to do, where my meetings are going to go. And that's only a very small part of pre-week planning. That misses the whole essence of this. And that's why people like, I mentioned, the CEO of Cliff Bar said, I wish I would have had this in my 20s. I've never thought about leading my life through this kind of lens. So let's talk pre-week planning. That's the 3rd habit. It's in chapters 8 and 9 of the book.
Well, where do we start?
Okay. So let's start back where we did. I'll cite that one more time. 68% of people feel like prioritizing their time is their number one challenge. So if you're listening today, let me just ask you a couple of questions here. Let's make this really personal, first of all. If on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 not being good, 10 being outstanding, where would you rate your health right now? Meaning your exercise, your sleeping at night, and everything related to your physical body. Okay, how about your emotional health? So for example, how are you feeling inside, stress level, etc. Same thing with what are you doing to keep your mind sharp? Where would you rate yourself on the mental side of things? How about with relationships? Family, friends, coworkers, staff, and then spiritually. Where would you rate yourself spiritually, however you define that? These are just a few sample areas, and everybody's gonna be all over the map. In the 2nd chapter of the book, we have what's called the circle of peace and balance, and it's a few of those things that I just mentioned, and it's a great snapshot of where we are today. And so as we get into pre-week planning, I mentioned that 80% of people don't have a process. The most common approach to time management is sticky notes, to-do lists, there's time blocking, there's all of these techniques, but it's not working for most people. And so what we've done with pre-week planning, as a former fighter pilot, is developed a process that's kind of like pre-flight planning. So think of this. As a former F-16 pilot, you could imagine what would happen if I would have said, you know what, forget pre-flight planning. I'm just going to jump in my jet and wing it today. It would be chaos, right? It'd be total confusion in the air. Well, how many times do we go into our weeks without a plan and expect a different result? And so just like pre-flight planning is an absolute critical part of being successful as a pilot, I treat pre-week planning the same way. And so for most people, they'll do it between Friday afternoon and Sunday morning. I used to say Sunday evening, but I no longer do. It's not been a winning habit because it's the first thing to go when family wants to have dinner or friends come over. So typically it's a 20 to 30 minute process that you set aside Sunday morning, Saturday morning, before you leave the office Friday afternoon. The point is it's 20 to 30 minutes that's quiet for you to go through your week. And there are 4 steps to pre-week planning, which we can briefly touch on here if you would like to.
Sure.
And they're very detailed in the book. Would you like me to go through those?
Yeah, let's
do you
do
want
that.
to expound on this?
Let's do that.
Okay. So imagine that you're taking 20 to 30 minutes quietly to yourself. We'll just say Sunday morning, just for the sake of a time. Step 1 in pre-week planning is, first of all, to review your vision and goals. Now that sounds simple, but in our research, we found that only 2% of people have developed a written personal vision, and less than 10% of people have both personal and professional goals. That happens to be habit 1 and 2. And just to back up a little bit, because this is step 1. When people read Do What Matters Most and go through this program, what we invite them to do is look at their 5 to 7 roles that matter most to them. So Gene, can we just do this real time with you?
Yeah.
So if you look at your own life, and when I say roles, I mentioned that I'm a father of 4. Father would be one of my roles. And you could put a role of family and make it like all encompassing, or you
Sure.
could break it out to say like husband or wife, father or mother, brother, sister, son or daughter. You could break those out as well. So what would be, say, for example, 4 or 5 of your most important roles?
Definitely husband,
Okay.
father,
Yeah.
coach.
Coach. Awesome. Could be like
Jiu-jitsu.
podcaster, maybe
I
friend.
could say podcaster, but I would put that to the side because it's something I do, but it's not my primary.
Okay.
I would say that it's jujitsu.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. So
That's
there we
kind of
go.
my hobby. And I would say CEO.
Perfect. So those are some good examples of roles right there. And the most important role for all of us is personal. You know, I go back to that well example. We can't draw water from an empty well. And so we've got to take care of ourselves mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Heart, mind, body, soul. So personal, and then the other roles that you decided right there. So if you're listening to this, you would think about what are your 5 to 7 most important roles? And what we walk you through how to do, because for most people, it's truly not their fault that they haven't done this. It's a skill set. It's learning how to do it. We've heard about vision, art, and goals our whole lives, but truly it's a skill set that most people just haven't really learned how to do to set themselves up for success. So we invite people to ultimately have a vision for each role, which is high level, and then 1 to 4 specific goals for this year that align for your vision in each role. For 98% of people that go through Do What Matters Most, that concept of roles and having a vision for each role and goals for each role is a totally new concept. Most of us are just used to our professional role.
Yeah.
So that's step 1 in pre-week planning, is to review our vision and goals for each role. Can you imagine the alignment that would come in someone's life by just doing that at least once a week? There's so much power in that. So there's so much peace and alignment. And so that's step 1 of pre-week planning. Step 2 is to write your roles. You would use the same roles as you would in your vision and goals. So if a person is using our digital planner, there's a matrix at the top of your Google Calendar or Outlook calendar that would have your roles pre-written for you. You put them in there and they're in there for good. If you're using our planner, you would write your roles each week. This takes 20 to 30 seconds. Step 3 is the power step. And this is where you sit down and consciously ask yourself, what can I do next week in each role? What specific action items? So there's nothing about a thought or intent. It's not be a better leader, be a better communicator, get more aligned as a team. No, those are thoughts and intents. These are specific action items. It might be sit down with April. It might be, date night with your husband or wife. It might be schedule that doctor's appointment that we've been postponing, or exercise times 5, meditate times 3, whatever. These are specific action items that you're thinking about in each role. And I'll just give you one example. This week I did a training in Las Vegas. And when I did my pre-week planning on Sunday, I went through each of my roles. And in the role of husband, I wrote, get flowers for Tanya. Just before I left for Las Vegas, it took me about 3 minutes. I ordered flowers and they were delivered while I was in Las Vegas that day. Now, what is the odds that I would have done that had I not sat down and thought about it in pre-week planning, looking specifically at that role? Probably close to 0.
Yeah.
Right? Those things just tend to slip through the cracks, especially if we're firefighting all day long. And so step 3 is the power step. What are the specific things we can do this coming week in each role? And step 4 is to take each of those action items and assign a time in the calendar. So whether that's Google, whether it's Outlook, or whether it's paper planner, it doesn't matter. We have tools for each one. The point is we assign a time. And this is really important. Can I add one final part to this, Gene? Those are the 4 steps. But for anybody that's out there that feels like they kind of are that perfectionistic mentality, like I have to check off every box or I'm not complete, the target productivity quotient in pre-week planning is 70 to 80%. In other words, we know that life happens. We know that things are going to come up during the week that we didn't plan for. And so we start moving things around. And it's okay if 20 to 30% of them don't get done. And before we wrap up, I'll share the data and research why that's okay. But the point is, we've got to allow for flexibility and grace, because that's life. And the power of pre-week planning will help someone accomplish 1,000 more priorities in a year than before they did pre-week planning in this format, all with less stress. And that has built into it the 20 to 30%, productivity quotient. So really, these are 4 simple steps. It's not rocket science. And if someone has a gratitude journal or time blocking technique that really works for them, they can bring that right into pre-week planning and it works great. So maybe let me just summarize these steps again in 30 seconds and I'll wrap up there, Gene, and then we can talk wherever you want to go from there.
Sure.
Step 1 is to review your vision and goals. Step 2, write your roles. Step 3, what matters most in each role. And step 4 is assign a time for each action item. So again, I would just say, imagine the impact that this would have on someone's holistic life, both outside of work and professionally, to take 20 to 30 minutes, which equates to 0.03% of our week, and it determines what we do with the other 99.7% of our week. That's pre-week planning in a nutshell. Can you already sense how powerful that is?
Now, let me break in here for a second. Rob was talking about health and emotional health. Now, I will say this because I've been through some health challenges, nothing's too scary like cancer or anything like that. But if your health is not a priority for you, you're going to get to the point where you're not going to have the energy, you're not going to sleep well. Maybe it's too much fat, or things are just not working the way you want to. Maybe it's just the way you feel, the way you look, or the way you feel about the way you look. You want to make sure, even as a CEO, you can have all the money in the world, but if your health is not in alignment with who you are and you're not where you want to be. I don't do any health coaching, but I will tell you, it's very important to me, and it's gotten even more important as I've gotten to over 50. You want to make sure you're taking care of your body. You want to make sure you're eating right, sleeping right, taking supplements, doing all those things so that you can show up and be the leader that people want to follow. And for you to feel good about yourself and to have the energy to overcome all of the challenges in front of you. Just my 2 cents. Hopefully you in agreement with that. And if I can help you in any way, make sure you reach out to me, gene@genehammett.com. Back to Rob. Absolutely. I think a lot of people don't think about the personal stuff. A lot of CEOs are listening, and I run multiple businesses, and so it takes a lot to keep things going. My wife does too. But adding in the personal, I think, is a big thing, because my kid's growing. He's going to be leaving home soon, and I'll be empty nesting, which is kind of scary for us. And so we're literally mapping out things like this. We didn't have a plan for it the way you've described it, so I appreciate you for sharing that, Rob. But if it's not happy at home, or you don't feel like you're being the dad or husband that you need to be, it's hard to have a complete, full, fulfilled life. I'm sure you're seeing the data behind that.
Yeah, that is exactly right, Gene. Do you mind if I just build on that thought
Sure.
a little bit? So, I mentioned earlier some of the data and the research. Here's a couple of quotes that really just resonate with me that describe pre-week planning well. Pre-week planning is about scheduling our priorities rather than prioritizing our schedule.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big difference. In other words, we're not just showing up and running from fire to fire. And a person is 46% more productive in the workplace when they have a balance of success stories in these other roles. I think we would all agree with that in theory or principle. But if we make that real to each one of us, all of a sudden you're like, of course, how many times have we brought home to work and work to home? And so here's just 2 very brief stories that kind of illustrate that. The executive team of Pepsi was going through this training, and one of our certified trainers was doing the training, and they were doing pre-week planning. Now, these are accomplished men and women, yet not a single one of them in the room had developed a habit like this. And they're like, this is going to blow me away. So this senior executive, late 50s, early 60s, was writing his roles. One of his roles was father. And in that role, they had about 10 minutes to do pre-week planning. He wrote, "Call my son." Now that's a seemingly simple thing. And the trainer was just curious and asked, "Okay, that's cool. Why call your son?" And his response was, "Because 7 years ago, my son and I got into an argument and we haven't talked since." It's like, whoa, what? Oh, holy cow. 6 months later, well, I should also say step 4 in pre-week planning is to assign a time. So she asked this executive, "When will you do it?" And he said, "All right, Thursday, 7:00. It's in my planner." Awesome. 6 months later, they had a follow-up training with the same executive team. This trainer saw this gentleman and just noticed a palpable difference in him. Like total difference, energy, smiling, looked happy. And so as she approached him, they started talking, and she asked, "Hey, did you make the call?" And he said, "Let me tell you what happened." He said, "I've been postponing that call for years." And like most of us listening, we can probably relate. There's things in our lives that we know are important, but we're like, I'll just do it next week. I'll do it next month, whatever. And all of a sudden years go by. Well, that's what had happened with him. And so he said, "But I saw it in my planner and I knew this was the time." So I picked up the phone and made the call. He went on to share that as soon as he and his son started talking, they couldn't even remember what they had argued about 7 years prior. And they've now gone on to become best friends. And all of that sounds great, but there's more to the story. On that first call, when he was talking with his son, he found out he had 2 grandchildren who he didn't even know existed. So what was the impact of pre-week planning in this already seemingly successful executive's life? Something as simple as making a phone call to his son. And how many months and years had that already gone through, slipping through the cracks? And it was finally him sitting down doing pre-week planning and saying, what can I do as a father? Now, do you think that made him a more effective executive and leader when he took that huge weight off of his shoulders?
Yeah.
Of course, right? And so now can I tie that into the research, Gene, with that kind of as the backdrop?
Yeah, I was going to add to this too. I know what my thing is for my husband, or not husband, father. My son loves board games, and it's very easy for him to, he never really asks because he knows I'm busy and whatnot. I'm, traveling around, I'm resting on weekends, whatnot. But I'm going to commit to playing at least chess, cards, Monopoly, something like that. He loves board games more than anything, more than watching TV.
You've got
So
it
I'm
so
gonna do that
dialed in,
once a
Gene.
week.
You've just perfectly illustrated the power and simplicity of pre-week planning. It's not rocket science, but it's life-changing. And that's why people love it. It's simple. And just to take your example right there, you're sitting down as a father and you're like, what's the name of your son, if you don't mind me asking?
Bennett.
Bennett. Okay, so it'd be play a board game with Bennett. And then you schedule time to do it. And it's like, hey, those things that are so seemingly simple, how many times have they slipped through the cracks? And so let's take your example of the board game and this Pepsi executive of the phone call. We did the research on this in 2020. Everyone would comment the same, it's life-changing, et cetera. Great. But what's the objective data say? And so we took a group and sample of executives, and they all had their own technique before, learning pre-week planning. So anytime you do research, right, you have to establish a baseline. So we established a baseline. And week one, the average normal person, executive, would plan about 24 action items into their week. And in week one, they accomplished about 13. So that's a productivity quotient of about 50%, which is totally normal, right? Because we're learning a new habit. Hey, Rob said something on that podcast about this digital planner working for Chrome. How does that go again? Oh, yeah. However, by week 3, 4, we've got it dialed in. It flows so easily and smoothly. It's starting to become a habit. So by week 4, the normal person plans about 41 action items in a week and accomplishes 33. Here's what blew us away by that. You could objectively say with that research, Gene, that by week 4, subtracting 33 from week 1, 13, a person is accomplishing 20 more priorities in a week by doing pre-week planning than they were before, using week 1 as the baseline. Over the course of a month, that's 80 more priorities. Over the course of a year, that's 800 to 1,000 additional priorities that we accomplish with measurably less stress. So when we have this circle of peace and balance in chapter 2 of the book, and people take that initially when they read the book, it's amazing to see what happens after just doing pre-week planning for 4 weeks, in conjunction with the other 2 habits we haven't even talked about here. There will be a measurable increase in almost every aspect of their lives when they do it. So your son, just that simple board game, what's the impact that has on the relationship? That Pepsi executive, what was the impact of that one seemingly simple call? Me writing a note to my daughter before I go on a trip and just leaving it on her pillow, or sending her a text. What's the impact of all of these? And the same applies professionally, right? Sitting down with John or April, seeing what their vision is, how they're doing. Those are types of things that are transformational rather than transactional. And if we're constantly firefighting, we never get to the transformational. We're just stuck in the transactional of firefighting every day. And a leader, especially an effective leader, cannot continue to be there and expect to be successful long-term.
Well, let me break in again here. Rob has had an incredible chance to document this one habit, and that one habit can change a lot of things for you. I really do believe that if you do this habit that Rob's talking about with the weekly pre-planning, you will have a different life in the coming months. Now, you have to do it genuinely. You have to really work at it. I will also tell you that there's probably not a lot of things we could cover today. And so I've got a little bit of a guide that I created a few years ago for busy CEOs and executives called Hyper Productivity. It goes through different tools that we have seen successful. I've used them myself. My clients have used them. I want to give it to you. I'm not going to hold this back, but you have to send me an email at gene@genehammett.com and say hyper productivity or productivity, whichever it is, and just say you want the free guide. I will give it to you. I don't have sign-up pages for these things anymore. I'm asking people to send me an email. So take a chance and do that. I'm not going to send you, 14 emails and put you on my newsletter list and whatnot. I don't even have a newsletter. So trick is on you. No, I'm just kidding. I'm happy to give these things away for you. So if you want the hyper productivity guide, just send me an email, gene@genehammett.com, and you can get it for free. Back to Rob. Love it. I know that you teased us about the other 2 habits. So I truly want this to be a tease. So if those that want to buy the book can go dive deeper. So give us the name of the habit and give us like 1-sentence explanation.
Yeah, so habit number 1 is developing a written personal vision for each role. It's critical that you write this the right way, though. And that's what we walk through in the book, is not only giving you examples of what those look like, but how to write them in a way that really is effective and gets you fired up. Habit number 2, once you've got a vision for each role, is to say, what are 1 to 4 specific goals for this year that would measurably move you towards achieving that vision? Again, it might sound simple, but there are some key differences between a New Year's resolution, of which 85 to 90% are broken 2 weeks into the year, and writing a goal where we set ourselves up for success. And that's why, a lot of people, there's a little negative connotation sometimes with goals because they haven't worked in the past. A lot of that has to do with the way we word them. And in chapters 5 and 6 of the book, we will walk through very clearly how to write a goal in a way that becomes exciting and measurable and sets a person up for success. Can I share a 30-second story how those tie together?
Sure.
There's a company called Schluter Enterprises. If you've been in a shower and you step on a tile in a shower, you've probably been on a Schluter tile. They do tiles and things like that for showers around the world. And we've trained all of their executive team in New Jersey and Texas. They went through Do What Matters Most, and one of their trainers said something really interesting. He was about 60 years old. We mentioned life-changing. And of course, there's the skeptic that comes out in all of us. He's like, yeah, right, we'll see. And by the end, he's like, okay, I buy into this. I can see how this would totally be life-changing. He had developed a vision for his personal role that comprised of things like, I want to feel healthy and sleep well at night and have great health going into my senior years, something along those lines. Well, the reality was he was completely 180 out from that vision. He wasn't sleeping well at night. He didn't have good health. At that stage in his life, by the time the afternoon came around, he didn't even have any energy to keep his eyes awake. And something was really wrong. So one of the things that he wrote as a goal under that personal role was to get a sleep test done by July 1st. Now, that was a specific measurable goal that directly tied to his vision. He ended up getting that sleep test and found out that he had severe sleep apnea. As a result, and he'd had it for years, which, that can lead to Alzheimer's and many other things. As a result, he got a CPAP machine, and he wrote us about a month later and said, this is incredible. He's like, I'm experiencing some of the best health I've ever had in my life. I've started exercising. I'm sleeping well at night. All the things I knew I needed to do, but that I wasn't doing. And so it was really a combination of these habits in this systematized approach, vision, goals, and pre-week planning, that really helped him transform his life, even at age 60 and where he was at. A gentleman in Kenya was 92 years old and said, I can't wait to get started on these. And I was like, statistically in my mind, I didn't say this out loud, but I'm like, there's not a lot of runway left there. But what a great mindset that at 92, he was saying, I can't wait to get started on these. And that's really the power, Gene, is when you put all 3 of them together. And that's what's in the book, is really the how to do that and why it's so important.
Rob, thank you so much for being here. I love the detail of this habit. I'm even really excited that you framed them as habits. I've had James Clear on the show talking about atomic habits and how important they are. I've got a habit tracker with here on really my fitness goals. I won't show anybody here, but because it gets weird when I move the camera. But I can see it where I'm making consistent progress on that. And so I'm tracking habits. So I'm with you. I really appreciate you breaking this down for us to help us live a more fulfilling life, to do what matters most. So thank you for sharing that wisdom.
You're welcome. And can I share one place where people can get a digital planner if they would like it, Gene?
Sure.
So if you would like access to the digital planner for either Google or Chrome, or you would like to customize your own planner, which is awesome for the people that still like paper, and there's about 40 to 50% that do, go to dowhatmattersmostplanner.com. dowhatmattersmostplanner.com, and it will allow you to choose one of those 3 options. Either a pre-designed paper planner, you can customize your own from scratch and put in habit trackers and all kinds of other things that you're talking about right there, Gene, or you can get the digital planner for either Chrome or Outlook. And the point is, there's a tool for whatever your preference is. You don't have to be forced into some corner. Use whatever you prefer, and you can start right there.
Fantastic. Rob, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
Wow, what a great interview. I love getting into the details of this and seeing the way other people look at being productive and being the person that you need to be in all areas of life. It's not just one area. If you have everything that you have, want successfully in business, but your family is a wreck or your health is a wreck, you're not going to be fulfilled and happy with life. I think you've got to have all of these things working together. And that really is what we talked about today with Rob. When you go through this and you actually get some results behind it, reach out to us and let me know what you're getting from it, what you liked, and even what you didn't like. That's fine with me if you want to give me some feedback. When you think of growth and you think of leadership, think of Growth Think Tank. As always, with courage. We'll see you next time.